Okay, everybody, let's go ahead and create our body for our train assembly that you're currently working on. Start a 2D sketch, click on the X and Y plane, and then we're going to start with the rectangle. Go ahead and come down, and our first dimension should be 2.35. Actually, we're going to make this 2.0. Make this 2.0. And I'm going to go ahead, just because I do know what this is supposed to look like, I'm going to drag this up a little bit to make a taller rectangle here. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an arc, and I'm going to go from one side to the other and go ahead and bring this up, and I'm going to add a dimension of 2.35. There we go. Now this center point needs to actually be brought up. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and get out of my dimension tool and drag this up a little bit so that I can add a dimension from the center point to the origin. I want this to be 0.375. And then I actually want this to be vertical with the center point, the midpoint of this line. So I'm going to switch to a vertical tool and click on the center point. That's the center point of my arc. And I'm going to find the midpoint of this line, which is the green dot. So it must have automatically added that constraint. So we're going to be good. If we look down here, it says fully constrained, which is fantastic. Now let's go ahead and extrude this. I'm going to select both parts of my sketch here, and then my extrusion is 1.75. Our next step that we're going to do is we need to cut a hole that goes all the way through this. So let's go ahead and start our sketch here. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a circle. And that circle has a diameter of 1.0. And I'm going to dimension the circle to this bottom edge being 1.75. And our other dimension is to go from the center to here, and that is 0.25. Now we need to have a line that comes tangent from the top and tangent from the bottom. So I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to find that yellow dot that shows up there and come across until it stops there. Do the same on the bottom. And then let's go ahead and trim off the rest of that circle. Perfect. Let's go ahead and go to our 3D model. And we're selecting this profile and we want it to cut. So let's change it to our cut. And we want it to go through the whole thing. So let's do through. Perfect. So now you can see that we added that in there. Okay, let's go ahead for our next step to start a sketch on this surface. And we want to draw a rectangle. Make sure you start it on that origin, come up. You want to make sure that you're hitting this edge. Go ahead and select it. And then let's go ahead and add a dimension on here. So the length of this, we can go from here to here, should be 0.875. Now you can see our sketch so far is fully constrained, which is perfect because it tells me that our new sketch hit all the points we needed it to on this surface. Let's go ahead and do a circle. And the diameter of that circle is 1.5. And then the circle off the bottom should be 1.375. Now it's saying one dimension needed because we told it the circle from top to bottom, but we didn't tell it left to right. So I want it to be on center with everything else. So I'm going to do a vertical constraint that identifies the origin to be on center with the rest of this. So our green point is the midpoint of this line here. There we go. And let's go ahead and extrude it. I'm going to choose extrude. You need to select both points of this. And then it should be 5.5 off this back side. So what we can actually do is we can tell it 5.5 minus the depth that this was, which is 1.75. And it does that math for us. So let it do the math, you guys. Now I missed that piece right there. See how it left that hole in there? I missed selecting that. So let me see if I can edit my feature. Will it let me add that in there? Yes, it does. Perfect. Sometimes it's a little temperamental, but it did let me add that in there. So this is what yours should look like so far. Okay, the next thing we need to do is we need to put a hole that goes down into here. So we can't put a hole on a rounded surface, so we need to actually create a plane that goes straight across the top of this so that we can put our sketch on that. If you expand over here, I know that the bottom plane is the XZ plane. I know that when we did the sketch for this, that to the center of the circle is 1.375. And I know the diameter was 1.5. So from the center of this to the top is half of that, so it's 0.75. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it I want to do an offset plane, and it's the 1.375, and then do plus 0.75. And it should place it right on the front. And to double check, we can hit this front. And if you zoom in, you can see that we did do the math correctly. Let Inventor do the math for you. You don't need to do that. Perfect. So let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and go straight down. Okay, let's go ahead and start our sketch on the work plane. So I'm going to start 2D sketch, and I'm going to go ahead and choose it from over here. You could have chosen it from your workspace. That would have been fine. And we need to do a hole. So to do a hole, we have to put a point. So I'm going to draw a point, and then I need to dimension it. So from here to the edge is 0.875. And then we need to make sure it's on center. So let's see if we can do a vertical constraint here. I want this to be on center with this midpoint, and the hollow yellow circle is identifying the midpoint. And you can see that that turned fully constrained, which is perfect. So let's go ahead and come up to our 3D model tab and click on hole. And let's go ahead, and we do have a depth. So we need to make sure we have our depth. And we do want the angle at the bottom. We don't want it to be flat. And our depth is 0.25, which mine was defaulted. So go ahead and make sure yours is 0.25. And then the diameter is actually 0.50. And hit OK. So when we kind of rotate here, let's go ahead and switch our views to a wireframe. We should be able, actually, wireframe with hidden edges. So we should be able to see that point right there. You can kind of see that there. At first I wasn't sure we did that right, but we see it. So that's perfect. So let's go ahead and go back to our shaded view. Our next step is to put the cowcatcher holes on the front of this. I'm going to go ahead and hide my work plane just so that I don't have to sit here and look at it. Let's go ahead and start a sketch here. Now, because we need to put holes, we need to use points. So I'm going to go ahead and select points. You guys should be really good with these by now. And I know that these need to be directly across from each other, so I'm going to go ahead and select my horizontal and select both of them, which is perfect. I know that this one needs to be on center with this midpoint of the bottom, so I'm going to choose vertical and choose those two. Perfect. And let's add some dimensions. So these need to be 0.125 off the bottom. Zoom in a little closer for you. And then this point off of this edge is 0.375. And this point off of this edge is 1.625. So to double check ourselves, if we were to go from here to here, it should be that 375 just like this one. So that works. But we don't need that because it's already defined both of these going left to right. Now, this point up here needs a height added to it, and that is 0.625. And we can see down here we're fully constrained. So let's go ahead and go to our hole command. And we have a basic hole, and the depth, it's not a through all, so make sure you have a depth. So the depth is 0.125, and then our diameter is 0.125. Perfect. So if we rotate this, we can see those holes in there. Our next step is to add the holes on the side here. So let's go ahead and start a sketch. And you guessed it, we need to go up 2 points. And we're going to place 2 points here. We know they're directly across from each other, so I'm going to go ahead and add a horizontal constraint and select both of them. And then we have our dimensions. This first one off of this back side is 1 inch. And then the one towards the front is also off the back, and that is 4.5. From our point to the bottom is going to be 0.5. There we go, and let's go ahead and go to our hole command. You can see we're fully constrained down here, so let's go to hole. And we need a tapped hole, so make sure you come over here to your tapped hole. So what that means is that there's threads on the inside, so something that is threaded will be screwed into this. That's what it means. Now we need a tap of 0.25. You can see here that it's defaulted to 125, which is not correct. So let's come down to 0.25, and it changes to a 1/4 20 UNC threads. That's a certain type of thread. And we have a certain distance that we need to go down, which is 0.875. There we go. And I'm going to hit OK. And you can see here, you can see those threads inside there. Now we need to have these same holes on the other side. So really the easiest way to do this is to find a center plane and use our mirror command, which we hadn't used yet. So I'm going to just sit on top of these. Now we don't have a plane that's already down the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remind myself what the distance all the way across is, because I have this one that's on that left side. So if I come up here to tools, I can measure the distance of this, and it's telling me it's 2 inches wide. So if I select my YZ plane and I come up and I go to my plane and I go to offset, I can offset it 1 inch, and that puts it directly in the middle. See that yellow plane right there? So now what I can do is I can mirror these to the other side using this plane. So let's go ahead and come up to our mirror, which is right up here. And it's asking, what do I want to mirror? So I'm going to mirror, I'm going to choose it from over here on my feature plane, my feature tree over here, my whole tree. And then I'm going to select mirror plane in my box, and then I'm going to select my plane itself. You could have also selected it from here. And I'm going to hit OK. And if I look over, it gave me a set exactly in the same position. All right, you guys, we're almost done. Let's go ahead and turn this around. Now I'm going to hide that plane one more time so that it doesn't get in our way of what we need to see. I'm going to start a sketch here. We need to put a hole back here. So once again, we're going to go to a point and select. And then my dimension for this point is from here to the bottom is 0.375. And it needs to be on center, so I'm going to use my vertical command and choose vertical, choose my point, and then find that horizontal, the center of that horizontal down there. And that's going to keep it on center with the width of this at all times. And let's go ahead and come up. We're fully constrained, so we can go to our hole command. And our hole needs to be just a plain hole, simple hole, nothing special. We do have a specific depth of 0.5. And then the diameter is 0.25. And then go ahead and hit enter. Okay, it does not like the depth that I chose. So let's see what it is. Oh, let's make sure we have no threads here. I'm going to rotate this a little bit so I can see what way it's going, so we can figure out what the problem is here. We have a simple hole, clearance hole. Okay, I'm just retyping this in, and it seems to have cleared up that error that was sitting here. I'm not sure why it set that in there, but I'm not going to worry about that. And let's go ahead and hit OK. There we go. All right. I believe the last thing we need to do here is we need to round off all these edges. So within our 3D model tab, we have a fillet, and it's a 0.10. And we need to kind of go around here. Now, it used to be that we could actually tell it to do the whole thing at one time. So I believe this last one here, let's see if that works. That it did. So this is actually, if you sit on top of it, it says it applies the fillets to all edges of selected solids, which is pretty much everything. And let's go ahead and hit OK. So you can see that it kind of rounded everything off. If you change your view, come up into here, you can change it so that you can't necessarily see all of those types of edges. It kind of smooths everything out for you. Okay, so something I just noticed is that it actually applied it to like all of the holes, and look what it did down here. This is not how we want this looking. Maybe if I rotate like this and zoom in, you can kind of see it's distorted all of our holes, and we don't want that to happen. So I'm going to actually right click and do edit feature. And then I'm going to see if it'll let me unselect certain things. I don't think it will, but I'm going to try anyways. No, it doesn't. Okay, so I'm not going to choose this one. I'm going to go here. Let me actually cancel out. Let's delete this. And let's go back into our fillet. And we're going to try this one. Let's see what this one looks like. Okay, so that works, but it is having us almost like we have to exit and do multiple fillets. So let's see. Gosh, I'd hate to have to do individual ones. Let me hit cancel, go back in. Once it's selected, it doesn't seem to like us unselecting it. If we do this, we can actually do multiples. It's kind of a hassle, but at least it's not going to distort all of our holes because we really don't want that to happen. So let's just come in here. You have to select all the edges, so you might have to zoom in. There we go. You rotate around. This is not ideal. There could be a different way that is actually a little bit easier. I'm obviously just not necessarily seeing that way, so we're just going to roll with this right now. There we go. And now our holes aren't distorted, which is what was really important.